All that said, thank you so much for saying all that. But I really just want to sign up for what my friend has here.
In that case, honestly, what I would do, if that's what they want to do, I'm going to write the business. I'm going to say.
I do. And I agree with that. The one thing that I would recommend in all of that is that if that does end up happening, guy doesn't want to look up his doctors, and you're going to say it's probably an HMO, because a lot of times they do.
Yeah.
And this has happened. You're gonna pick a doctor. Oh, I just want what my friend has.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, all right. And then at that point, I'm just going to make sure to document in my CRM.
That's the perfect way to walk them through that, is just making sure, and also don't make sure that you educate them on that scenario the same way that we just went through it and said, right, look, we're not allowed to make changes to our plan during the year at any time of the year unless you have what's called a special enrollment period. Unfortunately, there isn't one available to you, so we're going to have to wait, or this is what the plan is and here's what we're going to do. So take the time to have that conversation and to educate your client on how that's actually working.
Welcome back to Medicare Agent IQ. I'm Raul Gonzalez.
And I'm Oscar Ibieta.
And so today we're going to continue on with what's the move? Like how can we help agents to be more successful selling Medicare? Going through some questions and kind of mimicking experience. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, and I'm liking these episodes that we're doing, and we're getting some good feedback as well. So we just figured, let's do some more of it, and let's walk through more scenarios with people and see, really just talk about how we would work through a lot of these things.
Yep. So I've got one here. It says, I just got a letter that my doctor will no longer be accepting my insurance plan at the end of the month, and I would like to keep my doctor. What are my options?
That's a good one. I like that one. And so here, first and foremost, I just want everybody to know, the fact that you got a letter, or your client gets a letter saying that their doctor's no longer going to be accepting that insurance plan, that does not trigger an SEP. That does not create a special enrollment period.
Yeah, a lot of people think that. No.
You gave me this look like, yes, it does.
No. A lot of people, it's kind of one of the frustrations in Medicare for me. It's like, well, if a person's network is changing, big, like in the month of July, they should have the opportunity, but unfortunately there's no special enrollment for that. And so really what they have to do is during, depending on the month, they're going to find a new doctor for the time being, regardless.
Yeah. Or the other thing is look to see if there are any other SEPs that are available to them. I know right now we've got these SEPs that are out there. You've got some disaster SEPs that are out there, or maybe, currently things will look different next year, right? But you've got the LIS or the dual, depending on what demographic, if they're a dual client or not, you can use that SEP. So you just want to look to see if there are any other SEPs available to them. Maybe they've got a chronic condition and there's a chronic plan available that you could move them over to. Kind of try and figure out ways to see how can I help my client keep that doctor moving into next month. And once you've worked through to see, okay, let me see if there are any SEPs. Now, if there aren't, then it's probably something that's going to have to wait until AEP to look at making a plan change. And in the meantime, like you said, you'll have to help them find another doctor that is in the network with their current plan.
Yeah, I think the conversation with that client is like, hey, remember we talked about this. There's going to be times where the network changes, and it unfortunately always seems to happen in the middle of the year, never during open enrollment. So what I would recommend right now is we'll go ahead and we'll keep you on the plan that you're on right now, but why don't we just see if we can find another doctor in the meantime, not trying to get you to switch permanently, but in the meantime, someone that's going to take good care of you.
Yeah. I think that's the perfect way to walk them through that, is just making sure, and also make sure that you educate them on that scenario the same way that we just went through it and said, right, look, we're not allowed to make changes to our plan during the year at any time of the year unless you have what's called a special enrollment period. Unfortunately, there isn't one available to you, so we're going to have to wait, or this is what the plan is and here's what we're going to do. So take the time to have that conversation and to educate your client on how that's actually working and the reasons behind it. Don't just say, oh, you can't change plans right now, but so we're going to have to switch your doctor in the meantime. You know, you want to have a good conversation and make them feel good about why, help them understand why they can't change their plan right now.
And I think making it clear that you've looked for all their other options, right? Like you said, just make sure that they understand, like, look, I tried to see if there was any special enrollments that could get you to change. Unfortunately, this is something that we're not going to be able to do. And let's go ahead and get you with another doctor here. I've heard, things about this doctor. You want to give them a shot again, just for the next 2 months. And sometimes it's a specialist. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's the primary care doctor. And so they probably have different levels of urgency, right? So, I've unfortunately seen it where someone's going through cancer and then an oncologist got moved out of the network. That's a frustrating thing. And, but unfortunately it's a reality of these plans. And some might say, well, that's why we said go with the Medicare supplement in the first place. Well, my client wasn't rich.
Right.
It
didn't make sense for them
financially. It never made sense. This is part of it. And so when people, this is a bad idea. Yeah, but the other bad idea is if they didn't go on a Medicare supplement, then they stayed on original Medicare with no max out of pocket, and they're dealing with chemotherapy with no maximum out of pocket. There's a reason that these plans exist. Just like if you're working, right? People act like when you turn 65 is the first time you ever had to deal with the network. I have insurance through my work, and it's not even a PPO, it's an EPO. So I don't have to get referrals, but I do have to stay within this really truncated network. It's not like it's a huge network. That's just something that I have to deal with. It's a network, and that's just part of life, unfortunately. And so a lot of times, because you will hear people go, oh, should have selected a Medicare supplement in the first place. Not everybody can afford it.
Right. And even if you've got a PPO, right? Even I've had a PPO in the past, but we make sure to stay in the network because we know that if we go out of the network, it's going to be so much more expensive. So do we have access to go out of the network? Sure. Do you want to?
Right.
No.
Yeah. And actually that's a conversation that could come up. And when you talk to your client about this, and a lot of times if they are on a PPO, the doctor will say, no, we'll continue to see you on the PPO out of network and we'll work with you. But it's important that if you're having this conversation with your client, that you can kind of explain to them, hey, look, they're saying they're going to work with you. And so they might still only charge you $20. Maybe they're going to take less when they bill or whatever the situation is. But I want you to know that this changes a few things. One, when you go outside of the network, that maximum out of pocket we talked about, that's only, $5,000 on this PPO plan. You see this other side over here that says it's $10,000 or whatever it is, this $10,000 max out of pocket. That could be your situation because you've decided to go outside the network. And so I'm not here to tell you not to do that, but I just wanted to let you know that is something that is going to increase. And it's not just going to affect that one doctor. It will affect several other things. So if you've been dealing with chemo, you're opening yourself up to a lot more out-of-pocket costs. I just want to let you know that, so that way the worst thing is, and this is what I always communicate to people, the worst part is when people are surprised, right? Like it stings more when I wasn't prepared for it.
Yeah. And just going back to, it kind of got me thinking about some other scenarios that we've seen or that we've run into, but I started thinking, you've got people who are turning 65 and they have these questions about Medicare Advantage plans. And it's like, well, sometimes when I'm having a conversation with someone, I say it works very similar to the traditional health insurance that you've had in the past, in the sense of with a Medicare Advantage plan, there are networks, and depending on what type you choose, if it's an HMO plan, you may need to get referrals, but it's not a whole lot different than from what you're used to now. And I tend to do that, or I will have that conversation, especially when somebody comes to me and says, hey, I keep hearing all these bad things about Medicare Advantage plans. Why do I keep hearing all these bad things? Or I don't want a Medicare Advantage plan because I've heard all these negative things from other people, or I've seen these videos on YouTube. I feel like that's the biggest thing, is people go to YouTube and they just come across these videos where people don't have anything positive to say about a Medicare Advantage plan, and now they've planted that seed.
Agent.
Yeah.
There's a video I saw, and gosh, the thing has over 1 million views, and it's like why I would never go on a Medicare Advantage plan. And I get it. Like I get it. that for some people, Medicare Advantage plans don't make any sense, but sometimes as an agent, you're having to combat that because people will have that. The only problem is on the flip side, again, we've talked about it before, 10 years from now, when you're paying $300 a month for your Medicare supplement, right now, Medicare supplement premiums are skyrocketing even from when we're recording this. So the question is, like, when does it become unaffordable? When do you say, you know what, like, I'm just going to take my chances on this max out of pocket on an Advantage plan? Make more sense. So
right. Yeah, so that's just one more obstacle, right, that you've got to overcome as an agent when a client reaches out to you and they're telling you they've heard all these negative things about Medicare Advantage plans. So that's how I have the conversation with them and say, look, it's very much like your traditional health insurance. You've got to, there are networks, and don't worry, you've got a lot of options out there, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to help you figure out what options are good options that are available to you, and then we'll go through them and figure out, what's going to make the most sense for you. But that's our job, right, is to talk them through that and then walk them through that process.
Right. So on to the next. How would you handle a situation where a client asks about a plan that you don't personally represent or that you don't feel is the best option for them?
Well, when I go through and have the conversation with them, or they reach out to me with this question, I'm probably going to be pretty upfront with them, and I'm going to say, look, that's not a plan that I'm contracted with, that I represent. I'm still happy to sit down with you and look through it and see if it's something that does make sense for you. And if it does, then I can, either we can reach out directly to the carrier, and you can enroll into that plan, or I can see if maybe there's another agent that I know out in the field that I've worked with in the past that I know does represent that carrier and get you signed up with them. But I'm definitely going to, be upfront and honest with them and let them know, hey, I don't represent that carrier, but let's sit down and let's have a conversation and really maybe figure out, what are the reasons that they're wanting to get off of the plan that they're on to begin with. Or I might even look to see other carriers that I do represent that maybe, I want to listen to them and I want to understand what their pain points are. What are the reasons for them even considering why they want to come off the plan that they're on? And then I'm going to take that information, kind of process it and say, okay, well, these are some of the other carriers that I represent. Let's see if I can bring another good option to the table for them with the carrier that I do represent and see if that's a good fit for them.
Yeah. So there's we're in San Antonio. How many carriers are in San Antonio?
I was just looking at that earlier, and I feel like carriers, there are 15, I believe. 15, yeah.
But there are, so in our market, and you might be listening in a market where this isn't happening, or there's others that it does. But San Antonio is a lot of people look at it as a great opportunity for HMOs. And so a lot of times you'll see companies that will come, and it'll be a random company that's doing well in this one area in California, and they decide, San Antonio, where we want to go. And so they'll come out here, and they'll drop a flag in San Antonio, and then people from New Jersey, same thing, come drop a flag in San Antonio. So everybody tries to do it. It gets to a point where, as an agent or as an agency, you're going through and you're doing certifications. And how many did you just say? 15. Okay. I do 8. So or 9. That's about enough for me. And every once in a while, there might be a situation where this one particular person says, you know what, I want to just go with this one carrier. And so I will try to see, hey, are you sure there's nothing I can do? Like, maybe I can review the benefits with you and just see. And if the answer is, no, I still want to go with that, then I'm not going to even try to get contracted with them, to be honest. Like, I'm like, dude, I don't need another certification. So, for this 1 out of 1,000 people that ends up going on this plan, just go ahead and I will find someone. Hey, does anyone else in my agency or anyone else that I know represent this carrier? I personally wouldn't. Some people are like, I'm not leaving $1 on the table, and they'll go out and try to get contracted. You might be too late, depending on when they call in their buying cycle. And I've seen it to where agents will do that, and they'll reach out to us as an upline and just like, hey, I got this thing, but it's already September the 10th, and they need an October 1st effective date. I'm like, well, we could try, but I can't guarantee you that it's going to go through by 9:30 for you to be able to get that 10-1
Yeah, because some of
enrollment.
these things we don't have control over. Like we can send up the request, but then sometimes things can get held up, or it takes a while for the carrier to get the email out. The contract invitation. Every carrier has a different onboarding process, and we just kind of have to sit and wait and kind of let these things run their course, and we have no control over whether that's going to take a few days or a few weeks.
Yeah, some are much faster than others, unfortunately, and so it's just something you have to deal with.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm going to throw out the next question, which was the way the way that you read it at first.
Okay.
And so the question is, how would you handle a situation where a client asks about a plan that you don't personally recommend for them, or you just don't feel is the best option for them, and they're telling you, hey, this is the plan that I want? So let me kind of, I'll be the customer real quick. So, hey, look, here's the thing, Oscar. I appreciate that you wanting to help me here, but I really just want to go with my friend over here has this plan, and it's easier for me not to have to go through all this. Would you just go ahead and sign me up on that plan?
Yeah. So my response is going to look something like this. I'm happy to do that, and if that's the plan that you ultimately want to go with, then we can absolutely go that direction. But here's what I like to do is I want to do my due diligence on my end as your agent and go through and just make sure that this is the plan that's going to make sense for you, because I want you to remember I'm an independent agent and I work with a lot of different insurance carriers, so we can look to see, your situation may not be exactly the same as your friends, and you may have different needs, you might have different doctors, you might have a different list of medications that you're taking where it might make more sense for you to go with a different option other than the one that your friends got. But absolutely, I'm happy to look and see if that's a good option, but I also want to take the time and see if there are any other good options available to you. And so what I've done there is, in that response to my client is I've addressed and I've acknowledged their request, right? I wasn't quick to say, well, no, we don't know that that's the right plan for you. You might need some other options, or there's a lot of other good options, or I don't recommend that plan, right? I'm not going to be quick to say that out loud and say, hey, this isn't a plan that, that I would recommend for you. I never say that, right? I'm going to sit back and I'm going to listen to them, and I'm going to acknowledge their request, or what it is that they're sharing with me. And then I'm going to ask them to give me an opportunity to let me do my thing and say, look, let me look through all the options for you.
All that said, thank you so much for saying all that. But I really just want to sign up for what my friend has here.
In that case, honestly, what I would do, if that's what they want to do, I'm going to write the business. I'm going to say,
I do. And I agree with that. The one thing that I would recommend in all of that is that if that does end up happening, guy doesn't want to look up his doctors, and you're going to say it's probably an HMO, because a lot of times they do.
Yeah.
And this has happened. You're gonna pick a doctor. Oh, I just want what my friend has.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, all right. And then at that point, I'm just going to make sure to document in my CRM that this was the conversation that he did. He really didn't want to spend a whole lot of time. And realistically, at that point, he's not looking for an insurance advisor. What he's looking for is like a in-person website enrollment, like self-enrollment.
Yeah.
That's what he or she is looking for. So at that point, what I would just document it in my CRM, in my notes. And so that way, if anything ever came back, or when that inevitable call comes, that he made a complaint about you with CMS because you didn't tell him that his specialist that was super important wasn't in the network, you've got that documentation to fall back on. You're like, hey, look, I really tried, and this was the situation. So that's what I would do.
Couple of takeaways from that I want to dissect from this question, from this scenario, is really what a lot of times where you see this scenario, maybe not a friend, but sometimes a spouse. Right? You get the spouse that calls you, hey, my husband is turning 65. I want to get him on the exact same plan as me, which is great. And many times that does end up happening, but I will tell you, there are a lot of times where it doesn't end up happening. And so that's where so at the end of that conversation, right, where they just absolutely insist on going with the same plan as their friend or spouse, go ahead and write the business. But I'm going to end that with just saying, hey, look, I want you to understand that I do represent other carriers. So if at any point, things go south, or if it turns out that specialist is not in the network, you don't have to go and reach out to another agent, or you don't have to call, 1-800 this carrier or that carrier. You can come back to me and call me, and I can help you make those changes. So, as cheesy as this sounds, I work for you, and my job, I get paid to service you and to enroll you. And so my job is to make sure that you're taken care of. So that's one takeaway, right? Another takeaway that I have is, everything that you and I just went through, don't be so quick to give into that. Client calls you and says, hey, can you just enroll me on the same plan as my friend? The last thing that you want to do as an agent is say, yeah, absolutely. Go over, enroll him in that plan, and call it a day. You don't want to do that. You want to make sure that you do everything on your end as their agent to say, hey, well, look, do you see the same doctors? Give me a list of the doctors that you're taking. Let's look through the medications that you're taking, and let's just make sure that this is the right option for you. But as an agent, you don't want to be so quick to just say, yeah, absolutely. Easy piece of business. This was cake, easy money here. Like, you don't want to do that as an agent. You want to make sure that you have that conversation with them and go through it.
Yeah, and just get all of that. But again, I'm not going to just keep going back and forth and,
sure.
and arguing with the client. So, any other thoughts on that one?
No, that's it.
All right, let's move on here. So, if a client doesn't fully understand their coverage options, how would you explain the difference between original Medicare, Medicare Advantage, and Medicare supplement plans in simple terms? I'm kind of thinking like you're at a special event and you get the question, oh, well, I'm just trying to understand the difference between these plan options. And so I'm hoping that you can explain it to me. How would you, like, what's an elevator speech on the differences between these plans?
Yeah, so I actually just went through something very similar to this. I had a client reach out to me. She's on a Medicare Advantage plan, and she says, hey, Oscar, can you talk to me about supplement plans? Because I really, with the Advantage plan, we have to pay co-pays and whatnot, but I think I want to get a supplement to cover the remaining 20%. So can I go ahead and add that to my coverage? And that's where I had to kind of back up and say, well, look, listen, well, actually, she's not my client. She's the wife of one of my clients, because I would have had this conversation and kind of educated her on this. But I said, look, the way that it kind of works is there are several moving parts to all of this. So we've got original Medicare, which is Part A and Part B. And it doesn't cover prescription drugs. Currently, what your Medicare Advantage plan is doing is it's covering those prescription drugs. But you kind of have a couple of different options. Or imagine, you've kind of come to these crossroads, and you have to choose. You can choose a different path to go down. If you choose to go down this path is called the Medicare Advantage plan, and this is how it works. It's kind of a combination where it combines your benefits for Part A and Part B, and a lot of times it includes benefits for Part D. We call these Medicare Advantage plans. Or again, you're at this crossroads, you can go down the other path. And this path is what we call a Medicare supplement plan. And this plan works a little bit differently. What this plan is going to do is it's going to supplement what your Medicare, depending on which plan you choose, but I try to keep things nice and simple. It's going to pick up, what Medicare is not paying for. And remember, I mentioned Medicare doesn't cover prescription drugs, so then we have to add a prescription drug plan to this. Of course, I'm kind of flying through this right now for the sake of the podcast.
That's what we're asking for. And for I wanted kind of just like that kind of short elevator speech of hey, look, these are the differences. I think pretty much that's the way that I would explain it as well. Just really kind of highlighting the fact that it's just there are different ways you can choose to receive your Medicare coverage, and one thing I do throw in is I say, well, look, some of the people that I talk to, and this is how I always explain it. Some people that I talk to will say, you know what, Raul, the most important thing to me is being able to see any doctor that I want to see. And I want to be able to just go if I have to go to the doctor and then say money is no object. And that's all over here on this side. That's going to be kind of the idea for more of a Medicare supplement. Other people will tell me, the most important thing to me is saving the most money and still getting good health care. That's important to me, but saving money, even if I have to sacrifice a doctor or two, I might be willing to do that knowing that I was able to save money because of the fact that, going with an Advantage plan, going with an HMO in particular, you're going to end up sacrificing some of that choice because it's a very small network. Where with the Medicare supplement, there's not necessarily a network. As long as a doctor accepts Medicare, you're going to be able to see them. So just kind of throw that in there. And so again, you take a 2-minute elevator speech, and I just made it 4. But basically, it's this idea. Just kind of we're wanting to paint a picture without actually having to sit and go through this whole conversation. And it really, I think when we kind of illustrate it in that way and say, hey, look, these are the two separate people and how they choose, I think it does help people to understand and really it doesn't matter how much cost. That's not going to be for me because I can't afford just whatever amount that it is.
Yeah. So. I think the important thing here is this is our job, right? And Medicare is so confusing, right? That's why these podcasts exist. That's why there's so much training. That's why that Medicare and You handbook is this thick. There's so much information out there around, Medicare itself and Medicare Advantage plan and plans and Medicare supplements and prescription drug plans. There's so many moving parts, and there's just a lot of information to take in as a consumer, even as an agent, right? Like as an agent, it's a lot. Can you imagine what it's like to be a consumer? Right. Gosh, that could be so overwhelming. And so that's our job. Like, I love what you said. It's our job to paint a picture, and that's what we need to do. We need to be able to illustrate these things and communicate effectively and in a manner where they're really going to understand, kind of simplifying things for our clients. And if you can do that, if you have the ability to do that as an agent for your clients, that's going to make you stand out amongst other agents. Because if sometimes we have these thoughts and we're saying these things and then we start using all this verbiage and these terms that just don't click for our clients. And sometimes that can cost you a sale as an agent because you're using all these words that are confusing them, and then you lose them, and now they're even more confused, and they may not ever tell you that. That's the thing is they may not ever tell you, gosh, Oscar, I'm really confused about I've been so confused about this and everything you just went through. I'm even more confused. They might just find somebody else to do business with. Or were you going to jump in?
Yeah, no, I think there's a time and a place to showcase your vocabulary, and you have to choose, when you're dealing with seniors and kind of figuring out, okay, who am I sitting in front of, and just kind of know your audience, because I do think that people tend to want to say things, and a lot of times I think one of the things that I see a lot of agents doing is only having one way to explain things. Yeah. And so sometimes I might explain it in a way that it just doesn't register. So a good agent would have one good way to explain it, right? But like a really great agent would have multiple ways it could say the same thing, that if it's not registering, and without getting frustrated, like, okay, this person's too dumb to understand what I'm saying. It's like, well, you know what? How about I try to explain it in a different way? And I think there's just not enough agents have that ability. I used to listen to Dave Ramsey a lot. Do you know who Dave Ramsey is? Yep. So I think most people do, right? So Dave Ramsey is the finance guy, but he always would talk about how to find an insurance agent. And he would always say, make sure that you find someone who is a broker that represents several different companies and with the heart of a teacher. And I think that's a big part that kind of resonates with me, is that as people who work in Medicare sales, you really do have to have the heart of a teacher. You have to be able to one, to communicate, but two, to communicate in a way that would work for all levels of education, right? The higher education folks, but also even the lower education folks that might need you to explain it a couple times, and maybe in different ways that are more basic, that you would actually do that. So
because even those folks that are of higher education, maybe they were a really good a VP or CEO of something that had nothing to do with Medicare, nothing to do with insurance. So just because they were very good at whatever industry that they were in, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're gonna be instantly be an expert. Now, they've probably done some research and done a little bit of homework and maybe have some good questions for you, but ultimately it's our job. We're the expert, and it's our job to go and have that conversation with them and educate them and make sure that they're understanding everything that you're going through, and take the time to, I always say, look, this is your presentation. This is for you. If at any point you're confused or if you need me to go over something again, please stop me, interrupt me, and let me know, because you don't want to be that agent who just talks and goes through everything and never gives your client an opportunity to jump into the conversation or ask any questions. Let them know, hey, look, feel free to interrupt me. Feel free to jump in. If this doesn't make sense to you, let me know, and I'll go back and I'm happy to go over it with you again, or I can explain it, like you said, in another way so that it does make sense to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, look, that's our time for today. I just, we're going to continue to do this and really just help agents to be more successful. It's been a lot of fun because there's a lot of things that most agents would end up being able to pick up quite a bit on. So until next time, we look forward to continuing to hopefully be in your car on your trips to see customers, or to go out and talk to doctors, go out and talk to dentists, and try to create some partnerships. So we're glad to be on this journey with you. So until next time, thanks so much.